1 week season.
1 week season, fam. La Familia, welcome back. It is week 17, FanDuel Labs. We're coming to you day after Christmas. We gave you Wednesday off, extra day to soak things in, watch a little football, NFL bringing us games every day of the week. My family really appreciates that right now. Anyways, we're back to it. We got a 3-game slate coming up Saturday, which as always, we will have content for that. I will have a short slate right up for that up on oneweekseason.com. Join us. It's like $25 or $30, something like that for the rest of the season to join us as an inner circle member. Gives you access all the way through the playoffs. So if you have been hesitant to take the leap and you are wanting to check us out, see what is behind the curtain, you can learn a lot about us these last few weeks. And I've had some of my biggest weekends of my career during week 17 and 18, once during a playoff week. So certainly we are far from finished here, although it feels like you're at the finish line, especially for those of you in your fantasy leagues. If you're not in the championship, season's probably over. Take a couple swings. Come check us out, oneweekseason.com. We'll help you out, get you to the top of the leaderboards. With that, I'm going to bring my esteemed co-host, Maximus, on. Maximus, happy holidays. How are we today?
Happy holidays to you, sir. Hope you had a good time with the fam for Christmas. Doing good on this side. I'm going to be sweating it out here with the Drafters Best Ball in the final week, which is a good place to be. And otherwise, let's hoping to end the season strong with you and our OWS family on FanDuel this week. Amazing. The regular season's almost over. Went by like a flash, but here we are.
Yeah, so I kept the background. I didn't go with anything festive. There's lots of different holidays, so I figured I'll just keep it focused on the 1 week season, fam. We had another big weekend. Bunch of subscribers hit big on Sunday. And then we had several. I did the 2-game write-up yesterday and had a $90,000 win, a $12,000 win, and a couple other 4 or 5 figure wins from subscribers. They were all hitting me up in the Discord. So figured, the money's flowing. We'll just keep the same backdrop. I'm superstitious a little bit. I'm playing in the big ultimate main event on DraftKings this weekend. It's a little over 3K buy-in, $2 million to first. So gonna take my, like Mike McD, for any Rounders fans out there, gonna roll up the stakes and see what I can do. Try to bluff Chan, if you will. Those who get the reference are gonna love that, and those who don't are like, what is this dude on? But anyways, I digress. How are we feeling, heading into these last couple weeks? Anything specific to week 17 or review from last week that you want to talk about before we get into the lineup?
Well, first off, in the words of KGB, get ahead. Turn and burn. I know the reference. Yeah, I'm reflecting on the whole season. It's really been a great season for me as well, and I think for the OWS family. I've been thankful. I had 2 first-place wins, 2 different weeks this season. They're hard to come by, even though in my case it was a small field, but even still, they were great triumphs. And and I'm going to write this for you, but it's, this is the week that there are rightful distractions between family and holidays and other sports going on. This is our time to dedicate the time and stay mentally focused and sharp, unbiased, and try to, it only takes 1 week to make up for all those other weeks that we may be complaining about when things didn't go so well. We still got a shot here, and we need to, pace ourselves and focus on the goal here.
Good. Very good. Concur. Where you want to start with this lineup? I'll go ahead and pull up my screen and you can kind of talk us through. Do you know where you want to start with this lineup?
Yeah, I think in honor that this is a FanDuel show, and amazingly, we haven't started a roster based on the game that always separates this site from DraftKings, and that is the Sunday Night Hammer. So I'm actually going to end where we started in week one. And maybe speaking of superstition, that's a good omen for me. Week one's when I had that first place finish. We're going to go with Jaden Daniels. The Washington Commanders at home against the Atlanta Falcons, who obviously are currently in the lead in the NFC South. They have to win out to keep that. Jaden Daniels looked eventually incredible last week. I mean, the ultimate dual threat. He can pass it. He can run it. We know what he's capable of. Clear stacking partner. I know some of my other OWS colleagues aren't usually as high on this guy as I am, but he's really served his purpose for me throughout the course of the season and during certain weeks. And so he has a little bit of an injury designation right now. I don't think it's going to be a problem, but obviously monitor it. This is Thursday. But we'll go ahead and do a simple pairing of Jaden Daniels with Scary Terry McLaurin. Looks like De'Ami Brown could be out this week. He's dealing with a hamstring. So a little more concentrated as far as the passing cores go. Not sure about Zach Ertz either. I think he may be back. No, it looks like he's back to normal.
Ertz is back. McLaurin actually was held out of practice as well yesterday with an ankle. You know, you get to this time of year, it's hard to know, you know, do they sometimes, you know, teams a lot of times are just giving dudes a day off. So, you know, obviously if we get to Friday or Saturday and there's like serious concern about it, that would change things. But yeah, him and De'Ami were both held out on Wednesday. So we'll just have to see where that goes. But we can, it's Thursday morning. We can work on the assumption that he'll be good to go in what is a very important game for the Commanders.
Yeah, it's a 47 game total. Washington's a 4.5-point favorite. So what I do like about this is if you're doing multiple entries, there's two clear stories you can go with. And one is Jaden Daniels connecting with Terry McLaurin against a softer defense than what they had to face last week in the Atlanta Falcons. Or you can do another team with Brian Robinson, who I feel is completely mispriced for his role this week. He's $6,900. This time the Commanders are at home as a 4.5-point favorite. I think this could be a bounce back spot, excuse me, for Brian Robinson as well. So I do like him based on his price this week. But in this case, we'll go Daniels, McLaurin. I don't think we necessarily need a bring back, but if we did have a bring back, you know, obviously we have a couple different options we can go to. Watching Michael Penix last week, you know, they didn't really ask him to do too much. There was a lot of feeding Bijan Robinson the ball, so there definitely could be a case to be made to bring it back with Bijan. Or if you think that they're going to need to open it up more, if Commanders are putting points on the board, you know, you can always go to Darnell Mooney potentially. I'm trying to see if Drake London, I think, yeah, he has a hamstring designation as well. Limited though, so, you know, may not mean that much. But the game does mean a lot for Atlanta, and so it should be somewhat competitive with both teams, you know, still clearly in positions to play for. And I just like the fact it's building around Sunday night, which we haven't done at all this season. And it's I just thought it was like a nice little ode to the difference between FanDuel and DraftKings. And besides the point system, this is the main one. You have 8 games on DraftKings and only 9 games here. And that's the other thing. There are a pretty few clear spots that I'm sure most of us will be talking about and targeting this week. But this one is FanDuel specific, and so that's why I wanted to start here.
Good. So are you wanting to add a Falcon in there or not, or are you leaving that up to me?
Yeah, I think I'll leave that up to you. What do you think? I mean, Bijan is definitely a high price at $8,900 with, you still have Algier in the mix as well. Bijan clearly the more talented back with the passing chops, although Algier can catch the ball too. But so, yeah, I'm fine with going that route. Or if you just want to bring it back with a little more price considered Falcon, that would definitely be Darnell Mooney at the same price as he was last week, $6,400. That would probably free up more salary to have freedom to build the rest of the roster out based on what we do on defense.
Yeah, so I am going to go with Mooney. I do think you kind of alluded to it. The Falcons, Penix actually looked really good. The film on him, he was good. They just didn't have to do too much against the Giants. I think he's going to be a big upgrade. I will mention there is some slight concern for rain and potentially heavy rain on Sunday night in Washington. So again, something we'll have to watch over the next 2 or 3 days if it does develop. But if that happens, if we get to that point, you adjust. At this point, it's just you're just guessing. Over 72 hours out. So, I think we'll just go with Mooney. I do think that. So two things: if you play McLaurin. The issue with McLaurin and he's been good. The issue is at his salary. Even as good as he's been, he has lots of games of at least 14 points. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 10 games of at least 14 points on FanDuel. We kind of talked last week about adjusting for your contest. So McLaurin's a guy that for like large field stuff, I really am not much of a fan of. His highest is 23.3. His last 4 weeks have all been good, but he's got 6 touchdowns. So he's very touchdown dependent here. But he's, pretty steady that he's not going to give you that like dud that crushes you. So I think for you building for your your 5 max tournament you play every week, McLaurin makes a ton of sense. For me, larger field stuff, I'd probably go to Zacchaeus, who is he had the 2 touchdowns last week. But so McLaurin's injury, I think they're probably it's like maintenance for him. But Diami Brown is actually a guy who I was playing because he kind of stepped in for Noah Brown. And Diami now is hurt, and he left during that game and then hasn't practiced. So I think that like Zacchaeus as a guy who, he clearly has gained some trust and I think his range of outcomes, like he has a not as strong a chance, but a similar chance to get like that 15 to 20 point game just by getting like 80 yards and a touchdown and a few catches, similar to McLaurin. So for me, larger field, I would try to save the money. So probably for me, it would be like Zacchaeus with Bijan or McLaurin with Mooney like we have here. So just wanted to kind of talk through that. Again, we kind of touched on that last week, but wanted to talk through it here quickly. I guess before I make any picks, I guess we'll just lock in the Raiders at 3,200. I think they're going to be like mega chalk, but the Saints just looked so bad last week. We might switch from that, but I'll put them in there just so we have some idea on salary as we go forward and can kind of figure it out from there. Does that sound good?
Yeah, the Raiders make sense. I was thinking the Browns too, maybe, because the Dolphins typically just don't play good in cold weather, although they do have something to play for still with Myles Garrett and company. But yeah, the Raiders clearly cheapest.
And that game actually, the Miami game, very similar in Cleveland to Washington. Probably going to have rain, potential for heavy rain, according to Kevin Roth at Roto Grinders. So, Buffalo, Cleveland, and Buffalo, Cleveland, and Washington games all have kind of high alerts on them. So we'll have to watch that and go from there. So looking at the running back position now, I was kind of thinking about Brian Robinson, so I probably go somewhere else now. Let's go to Aaron Jones. So Aaron Jones has, he's coming off. He had 23 opportunities in the Seattle game last week. He had 21 against the Bears. So he's been doing pretty well. He had a a decent game, 16 FanDuel points the first time against the Packers. Basically, at this point in the season, he's like dominating the workload. You look at Seattle, the Vikings passing game recently has kind of taken most of the touchdowns in production, but Jones played 54 snaps to Cam Akers only 7. He had 23 opportunities to only 1 for Cam Akers. They're playing potentially for the 1 seed. If they win their last 2 games, they're the 1 seed in the NFC. So, there's a lot of talk about like where guys will be rested, where they'll be. Teams might be cautious with certain guys. We were talking about it a little bit before we were on air about like James Conner, George Kittle, some situations like that. But the flip side of that is some guys like Aaron Jones who are maybe they're viewed as a little more fragile, and teams are actively kind of trying to protect them throughout the season. You get to this point in the season and it's like, okay, it's go time. Like, we're just gonna ride this guy. So I like him a good bit this week, and his salary is not too bad. And I'm gonna add a little mini correlation here. I'm gonna throw in Dontavian Wicks facing the Vikings, who they're so blitz heavy. They have given up a lot of strong games to wide receivers this season. Actually, 32nd in fantasy points allowed to wide receivers. Christian Watson Monday night went down with that knee injury. I kind of don't think he goes. He's got such an injury history, and they're playing on a short week. Green Bay still has something to play for. They could be the 5, 6, or 7 seed. They can't win the division, and they've clinched the playoffs, so they could be in any of the wild card spots depending on how things go. But I kind of think, I don't think like rushing Watson back, and even if Watson plays, I'm guessing he's just going to like re-injure it or aggravate it and leave in the first half. So Wicks has access to that Packers-Vikings game. I like that a good bit. And then at running back, I'm going to go to Bucky Irving. They're a team that kind of they blew that game against the Cowboys. One of the big critiques that Todd Bowles had after the game was basically Bucky Irving didn't touch the ball for like the last 10 or 12 minutes. And he had 19 opportunities prior to that. He smashed. He had his career game against Carolina the first time. Their run defense, we have been attacking all season with the likes of, James Conner, your boy, was absolutely smashing them last week when he went out with that knee injury. So yeah, that's a spot. Again, they need to win both games, and they need they're tied with the Falcons right now, so they need to, and they lost both head-to-head matchups, so they lose the tiebreaker. So they need to go 2-1 and the Falcons go 1-1, or 2-0 and the Falcons go 1-1 or worse, or they need to go 1-1 and the Falcons lose both. I think it's time to be done messing around, and I think Bucky Irving's going to get a pretty massive workload in a big game. And again, we've talked about weather a couple times. There's some potential for some showers down there in your neck of the woods in Florida on Sunday. So, what do you have any thoughts on what I've put in so far? And then we'll let you go from there.
I have your Brian Robinson dilemma in reverse. We're on a lot of the same area, but different players I had in mind. One guy I definitely wanted to lock in. Maybe this could be an overstack, but and by the way, good shout out on the weather reports. I don't usually look at that too much yet, but I probably should, factoring that stuff in yet, because it's so far out from the actual, especially the Sunday games. So yeah, obviously guys, check your weather reports, do your due diligence, because that'll definitely adjust what we may be creating here right now. But I was definitely pretty high on Jordan Addison this week. Maybe he could be in the flex and that free up salary for the tight end. This guy over the last 5 weeks, amazingly, has almost matched Justin Jefferson in total FanDuel points. I think they're a difference of 3.5 points Justin Jefferson's been great as well with 100 points over the last 5 weeks. Addison's at like 96.5, 97. I mean, he's averaged just under 9 targets a game over the last 5 weeks, and he's $2,000 cheaper than JJ. So he was a guy I definitely had. Basically, besides the FanDuel tributary that I started us with, that Tampa Bay, Carolina, and the Green Bay, Minnesota game were definitely 2 games I wanted to build around with so much, especially for Tampa. They have to win, obviously, to have a chance. And Carolina has definitely been competitive. So I could see that game being a good game to build. And then the same with the Vikings and the Packers, of course. The Packers can play spoiler. They can change their spot maybe to be a little bit better when the playoffs start. And obviously the Vikings have a shot at the overall number 1 seed. And I think it's only one team that gets a bye. So that's really important to still play for something like that. So my lane would be Addison. I think he's still mispriced, I think, for how he's being used at this point in the season. And then I do like, but Bucky Irving, I love the Irving take. And Wicks completely makes sense if Watson isn't going to play. So, I'm fine with overstacking, or I don't know if overstack's the right word. It's just, paying attention to that game on this build and, and then trying to maybe close it out, see what we have at flex and tight end.
Yeah, well, and it comes down to if you put Addison in, you're saying overstack in the context of if you play Addison and Jones
with Wicks as a bring back.
Yeah, so I mean it's no different than what you do like with quarterbacks often. It's just a matter of like, I mean, we saw it a few weeks ago. It was actually in the Bears game. Aaron Jones, that was his last 20-point game. He had 21 points against the Bears. That was the game that Addison had 29 points, so 50 points, they are just over 14K. So 3X would be 42. I mean, really, it just comes down to, you need the Vikings to score, 4 touchdowns probably, and 2 or 3 of them to come through these guys. And obviously, if they're scoring, then the ball is probably moving a decent amount. At least one of them is probably hitting a bonus. So really, it's just a bet on like, I mean, if you think about it in terms of like regular sports betting, it's like I'm betting that this game goes over the total is all it is, which is kind of a 50-50 bet in itself. But then obviously, the other 2 main guys are Jefferson and Hawkinson. So you're basically just hoping that the Packers, and you think about it schematically, Green Bay enters this game, what is a focus probably going to be? It's probably going to be Justin Jefferson. So, it certainly makes sense here. I think a potential option that we could do would be, so if we moved Addison in for McLaurin, we could add Brian Robinson to this. So then we have Brian Robinson with Jaden Daniels. Again, a very important game. And it's similar thing, like you're betting on, sure, he could maybe catch a touchdown, but really you're just betting on like Washington scores 4 touchdowns and you're going to get access to it. So Daniels throws 2 and runs 1, and Robinson runs 1 in, and the offense puts up 400 total yards of offense. You're there. Like, it's not like a far-fetched story kind of to get to. What do you think about that?
Yeah. In essence, you're getting all the touchdowns. I mean, either Jaden's running it in, B-Rob's running it in. I don't think Eckler is coming back. So, I mean, you got McNichols on limited snaps. But, he doesn't really throw the ball to B-Rob much, but, he is capable of catching a pass or 2. So, and you're putting him in the flex there. Okay. Yeah. No,
so we'd have those 2, and then with Mooney on the way back, thinking Mooney, the big play guy, either he is potentially pushing this game with some big plays, or, if Robinson and Daniels are having success. The Washington defense, Philly was just, running through them last week before Hurts got hurt. But if the weather does hold off and it's not really bad there, I think Penix could could make some hay. That could be a higher scoring game too. So, yeah, I think that's an option. And then, so what we've got left, we threw in defense earlier. I want to throw at tight end. I want to throw Chig Okonkwo in. He has been heavily targeted the last couple games, 21 targets, has not scored a touchdown during that time. Tyjae Spears, actually, I've got him on a few best ball teams, and he's been killing it. But, Okonkwo still only, probably going to be like 5% owned or less. And he's not super expensive at only 5,400. I do like Hawkinson a good bit. Some other guys I'm waiting to see like where the injury report goes. But I think Okonkwo, basically, like I talk about this in my FanDuel course, how like you have to like think about like the high end of the position. Bowers obviously is a monster, but that game environment is probably not going to be fireworks. I guess unless Olave and Kamara both come back, then maybe even then they've still got their same quarterback issues. So I like Okonkwo, and then what that does for us is it lets us pay up at defense, and we could get up to the Colts, who are playing this Giants team that is just, they've just been printing fantasy points for opponents.
By the way, shout out to Mark Hilo on the Chig Okonkwo. If you guys watch the Searching for Ceiling show with Rich Rebarb on YouTube, Hilo actually gave a shout out to Okonkwo last week, a foreshadowing, and of course he did have a great week. So yeah, no, Okonkwo, if you look at his targets over the last 2 weeks, he's definitely being more utilized and more involved in the offense now. I guess better late than never. I'm cool with the Colts, but it was amazing what we did have it at. If you keep it at the Raiders, that gives us $2,000 left over, and we can flip-flop Jordan Addison for the man, Justin Jefferson, and that would be another route to play it. It would work out perfectly. You can kind of mix and match there. But, the Colts make sense as well on defense if we wanted to end the team with whatever salaries left over from that one with somebody else. But that's one way you can do it, guys. Maybe Addison on one if you're not. And by the way, when I said overstacking, I think the term I was looking for was player block. It was more like a player block would be the right term for what we were doing there. But yeah, that would be another way to approach it if you kept the Raiders in there and just stick JJ, and you can't go wrong in this kind of game with him probably. So
yeah, so that's where like I like where your head's at, but then got to think through some of like the other moving pieces with it. So if we have on this roster Daniels and Robinson, so if you swap Addison to Jefferson's salary, touched on it a little bit with McLaurin, but Jefferson's salary at $9K, for you to be like, yes, I'm glad I paid that salary, he's going to have to put up like a really strong game, probably like 25, 30 points. If he's doing that, one of two things: either Jones probably isn't getting there, or if Jones is getting there, if Jones is still able to have a big game, then I would want Darnold. I would just swap Daniels to Darnold, and figure out, where do I find $800 more? So like, for instance, just to kind of walk through people, how I would think about it is if I was going to play Jones and Jefferson together. So basically, if I went to Jefferson, either I would move off of Jones or I would get Darnold as well, and just bet on the offense as a whole. And then I would probably move off of Mooney, and you could go to like Devontae Smith, Drake London, Garrett Wilson, although there's some worries about weather there as well, or stay with Mooney, maybe, probably stay with Mooney, and then could go up from the Raiders, could kind of flip the build there, or get like some leverage, I guess. The Raiders are going to be like mega chalk. So if you stuck with Mooney, you could just play the Saints defense, which is obviously the other side of that game. And generally that would just be like the Saints win instead of the Raiders, which I think is from like a game theory perspective, a strong way to go. And then, so it's just understanding it's not just the players you put in and the salaries they take up, but kind of what that all means then. So, different ways you can kind of go about it, but just how when you make those little changes, okay, I can change this guy to this guy. What does that actually switch for the rest of the roster?
Yeah, and I'm glad you did go down this path because we've seldomly kind of adjusted in show, so to speak. And it's good to see those angles of different ways. I'm fine with Sam Darnold there, like kind of in thinking about it. And as this team is evolving, as we're building it, kind of building off of that. And then all of a sudden it becomes a double stack, if you will, of Darnold. You got B-Rob to account for the Washington game, where to your point, if it's going to be bad weather conditions, they're probably going to lean on Robinson more at home as a 4.5-point favorite. And I actually don't mind the Mooney to London. If there's no limitations on London, that's more of a small field thing probably, but you have two wide receiver ones in JJ and Drake London. So they're very unlikely to bury you or to crater you if in small field, as far as that goes. And then Mooney would probably be more of the large field home run hitter type guy if his ownership's down. So yeah, I'm glad we did that. It was a good exercise and kind of, continuing to evolve the build. And so people can see that in real time. So that's pretty cool.
So we gonna roll with that then, the Darnold double?
Yeah, I think that's cool.
All right.
I think it's cool where we landed, where we wound up at.
So for those listening, we've got Sam Darnold at quarterback, double stacked with Aaron Jones and Justin Jefferson, Dontavian Wicks as a bring back within that game. A big Packers-Vikings game environment bet. Bucky Irving at our other running back spot, and then Chigo Okonkwo at tight end. And then we have Drake London at our last wide receiver spot, correlated with Brian Robinson Jr. in the flex. Little bet on that Sunday night game, just on the featured running back for the Commanders, and London kind of the higher volume, more consistent receiving threat for the Falcons. And especially if Washington does play with a lead and Atlanta has to throw more, would think that would lead to London potentially being peppered with targets. And this is about as low as I remember London's salary being this year. So not a bad spot there. And then we did stick with, to make it all work, stick with the Raiders defense, which I would think will be very chalky after how bad the Saints looked on Monday night. But, I guess we will just have to wait and see. I am curious with the Saints, what if they decide to try to give Kamara, let him go. He was estimated as a non-participant. I kind of think he will not go. But the one I'm a little more interested in is Chris Olave, which he's had 2 concussions. I'm surprised they're even considering it, but he was like a full practice participant on Wednesday. He's only $6K. And so you look at this where like he's a talented receiver at a low price point relative to kind of who he is. And there's like no target competition now, right? Like, if you remove Kamara and Taysom from that offense and how bad they looked on Monday night, like if they put him out there and they're playing to win, he could be a really high volume target. So something I'll be keeping an eye on into the weekend.
Yeah, if he plays, he'd be an interesting one to if we actually get clearance that he's actually going to go. My only prayer would be for whoever the quarterback is, I guess Rattler, please don't throw a pass that leads him on.
Our routes, not enough with the in-breaking routes. And well, Derek Carr is the one that was throwing all the hospital balls, so he's out. So maybe that's why Olave agreed to come back.
Yeah, right.
But yeah, for real though, well wishes to Olave. Hope he's doing all right. It was a scary hit he took earlier in the year. Glad to see him back on the field, actually. So yeah, we've got a lot to go. We've got this Thursday night game, speaking of bad weather, not looking great in Chicago tonight. And then we've got 3 games on Saturday. And then, yeah, our smallest main slate of the season on Sunday. The amount of games is smaller, but the prize pools are not. So stay locked in, people. Stay tuned in. Check us out, oneweekseason.com. We will see you on Discord. We will see you on Twitter. And we will see you at the top of the leaderboards. Bye.